Well, welcome to yet another video. So it is coming along pretty nicely. So let's continue on building the slash user ID slash cars route. So similarly like we did in the previous video, we need to again start with router, and we want to use the route function. And this time, like I said, we want the slash user ID and then slash cars, if you remember from the introductory video. Here we're going to have two functions, so we're going to have one for the get request and one for the post request. The get request will simply get all the cars that this particular user is selling, and the post is a way for this particular user to add a car to his or her collection. So let's start with a get. First of all, it's going to be stored inside of a user controller, and the function will be called get user cars, like this. Okay, let's me simply close all of them, and let's navigate to the controller. Let me copy and paste this name. Okay, so down here let's create that new method, get user cars. Similarly, it is also going to be a async await function, async request response next. Okay, let me actually move like this, scroll down so we can see it more nicely. Okay, so that's going to be that function, and what we want to do inside of that one, well, we're going to get a user ID similarly to how we get, for example, for the update user or any of these for that matter. So let's basically copy this line, we can reuse it like that, and now we want to query the user model and basically find user whose ID is the one we did just provided here. So find by ID, user ID, like this. But now you might be thinking like, oh, but this will return us a particular user, not a car, not the users selling cars list. So if you take a look here, we see that on each user object there is this field or property called cars. So basically we want to fetch the correct user given by this user ID, and then like pull this cars property out of the response that we get, and this cars array is what we want to send down to the client. So first of all, let's actually store this user inside of a new variable called user, and don't forget the await keyword here. Okay, now let's actually see what happens. So I'm going to console.log user. Okay, so now let's open our Postman. Okay, and let's see what users we actually have in the system. Okay, I need to start the server, that would be useful. Okay, and if I do this once again, okay, let's see what's going on. Okay, I forgot to start MongoDB this time, so let me do that. So I'll open a new tab. I'll navigate to my C drive, then program files, then MongoDB, and there is a folder called server inside of here. I want to use the newest version, but use whatever version you have installed here. Okay, inside of a bin folder there should be a MongoDB file. Okay, sorry for this, I totally forgot to start it this time. Okay, so let me try this again, and now everything is fine. Okay, so let me try to get a list of users. Okay, and we can see actually that each of these users have an empty cars array, which isn't the best for testing this function, because we will be getting empty lists of cars all the time. So instead of that, let's actually start working on the other route here first, so that we're able to actually populate the user with some cars, and then we can quite easily test to see whether we are getting the list of cars back. So just for now, let's leave it like this, and let's start working on the next one. Okay, so the next one will be post users controller. How can we name it? Well, we can say new user car. I could say new car, but I want to designate, to note to ourselves that this is still inside of the users controller. So later on, when we start working on the cars controller, some function name like new car totally makes sense, or like get car. But now we want to make sure that that we're still in that mindset that we're inside of a user's controller. That's why I want to like use the user words in there. So get but not get, sorry, new user car, like that. Okay, I save this and then come here. Okay, so again, sync function res next. Okay, so now what we want to do? Well, first of all, we expect to have a new car's data stored in, if you are remembering, the request.body. So we want to make use of that request.body to actually create an instance of the new car. So up above we have this user model. So if you remember this, we want to do the same thing but for car this time. But you might notice that we don't have car model at all. So actually we need to create one first of all. So let's create a new file inside of our models folder, and we're going to call it car.js. Okay, and now let me actually open this so you can see side by side comparison that it's really similar. As before, let's start with defining the mongoose and schema up above. So const mongoose equals require mongoose, and const schema equals mongoose.schema. Okay, so far so good. Then let's also start creating the car schema. So we'll need to save it somewhere, so let's create car schema as a variable, and then it will be assigned a new schema. This new schema accepts an object here. So if you you can either like take a quick look back into the introductory video, or just trust me on this one that we said that we want to have following fields. So we want to have make, and that will be string. That could be like Toyota, for example. So type would be string. Then the model, model would be like Prius, for example. So it's also going to be a string. Maybe we want like year of the car, and that will be, you guessed it, number. And then similarly to how we needed to make a connection between user and their cars here, we need to make a connection between car and its owner, its seller. So to do that, like, it will be really similar. We'll have here a field called seller, and that field and that property will be of a type, again similarly like here. So type will be a schema types object ID, and this time the reference value would be user, because like this is referencing this file and this is referencing this file, so it works like that. Okay, now our schema is done. So again, we need to use that schema to actually get a complete car model, similarly to how we did it here. So I'm going to go const car equals mongoose.model, and then I'm going to use a singular form of this model for the first parameter, that will be car. And just to remind you, whenever you use a singular form here, Mongoose will actually create a collection with a pluralized form, so it will be cars in our database. And then we need to provide a car schema, okay, like that. And now we just need to export the whole thing. I mean, actually just to export the car model that we just defined below here. Okay, so now we can come back to our users controller and we can get rid of this. we need to require the car model similarly to how we did it before. So we need to go up one directory, there is a folder called models, and then there is a file called car. Okay, now we can use this car inside of our new function. So like I said previously, we want to create a new car here. So let's do that. So I'm going to store a new car inside of a variable called new user, like I did here. So let's name it new car, and let me bring this up top. New car is going to be equal new car model that we just required, and then we want to pass the request.body inside. Now we can console.log to check basically what are the new car's contents like this. And actually, before we do anything else, let's actually test this and see that it works. Okay, so I need to navigate, don't forget, to this part over here. So first of all, let's choose any user. Let's say we want to populate this for this first one. So I'm going to go localhost 3000/users/ that particular user's ID /cars. I need to switch this to post, and then I want to turn this into a JSON. And remember, we had the fields make, so let's say Toyota, model, let's say Prius, year, let's say I don't know, 2015 sounds right, and let's send this, and let's check our commander, and as you can see, yeah, this is what we're getting, and this is great if you remember, because we can clearly see that Mongo did something for us by appending this _ID property over here. So now we have this new user created, and now we would actually need to save it. But we can't really just do something like new car.save as we did previously, because this car has a relationship like with some particular user, and we need to actually make that relationship work right now. So what we need to do is actually get the user whom we want this car to append to. So if you remember, we have the ID of the user, so let's use that. So again, up above, I'll simply copy this, because this will enable us to get a handle on that user's ID. And then let's get user. So to get user, again, we're going to refer back to this user model. So we will say user dot find by, and we can find by ID because we have it. So I'm going to provide the ID over here, and then let's store that user in a new variable called user. And please don't forget the await keyword here. Okay, let's make a quick comment here. So create a new car. Okay, so we are creating a new car, we are getting the user that we want that car to append to. Okay, now we need to actually do that. So let's assign user as a car's seller. Okay, so now we want to do this piece of the puzzle. We want to assign user as this seller here. So to do that, we actually need to refer back to our new car object, because now we're like doing that relationship from the cars side of things. So we will say new car dot, and then the property name over here, seller, simply equals user. Because we did this work over here, now we can simply do this and it will make sense to the MongoDB and the Mongoose. So now that's done, we can actually save the car with that change. So now we're going basically, like, we could have saved the car here, but that wouldn't really make sense, because then we wouldn't have this connection. But now that we have this connection added, our car object is totally complete, and now we can flash it to the database. So let's save the car. So we can simply type new car.save if you remember, but also don't forget the await keyword before that. Okay, so now the car is saved. Now we need to do similarly, like, but from the other side of things, like from the users side of things right now. So we want to simply add car to the users selling array named cars. Basically we want to use this car that we just created and basically push it into this array here. So to do that it will look really easy. Basically we will use the user object, then we're going to navigate to this cars property, and then we want to push again the new car that we just created. So as you can see, it was a bit strange to do this sort of things, but because we already did them, now it's really easy for us to make that relationship happen. And now similarly we again need to save the user, so let's save the user, this time not the car, save the user, and that will also be user.save, and please don't forget this, otherwise it really won't work, so await user.save. And now after all of this is done, we can simply respond back to the client with 201, meaning something got created, and the JSON this new car objects over here, and save it. So now if I navigate, this should be auto restarted, yes. So now if I navigate to our Postman, let's make this exact same request once again. So as you can see, we get back with what got stored, and as you can see, this is just a car object, but as you can see we also have a user here, because if you remember, the car contains this seller, and this seller is pretty much the entire user object over here, if you take a look. Okay, so this looks great. Let's assign another car, let's say Mazda RX-8. This is like one of my dream cars when I was little, and I don't know, let's say 2005, and let's save this one. Okay, and now let's test. Now if you remember, we were working on this one, but we needed like to take a quick break because we can actually test it. So now let's simply go back to get and try to get a list of these cars, like a list of these particular users selling cars, and see what's going on. So this is what we get, and as you can see we're kinda there. So this this user object clearly sells 2 cars, but we are only like provided their IDs. So let's go let's play with this some more. Let's say that we, instead of this, we just want to console log like users cars, and I need to escape this, and then say user.cars like this. Okay, and let me try this again. So we should now just see an array of IDs. Okay, great. So what we need to do to turn these 2 IDs into actual cars objects? Well, Mongoose has this function called Populates, and this is like a great usage of it. So find the Mongoose function find by ID, where we're finding that particular user, and what we want to do is basically say that we don't only want us to get back a user with an array of IDs as cars being sold, like here, but instead we want to tell to Mongoose to actually go on and for each ID inside of here actually replace that ID with entire car objects, like this for example. So to do that you need to type .populate, as you can see here, and the argument that you need to provide is the name of the field that you want to populate. So we want to populate a field called cars. So let's do that. So we'll say cars, And now let me actually return this to previous state so you can see side by side comparison. So if you remember, previously we got this, and let's see what we are going to get now. So I'm going to cancel this request and send basically the same one once again, and this time, as you can see, we get the same thing, but now the IDs are exchanged for the entire object that they represent. So this is awesome, and this is what we want pretty much. But now instead of like returning back to the client this whole mess, we just want to return back to client this array of cars. So to do that, we can simply come here and go res.status of 200, and then we want to send the response as a JSON with that array of cars. That array of cars is of course stored in the user.cars, and believe it or not, this is what we want, and this is how easy it was to do. So now finally let me cancel this request and let's try it now. And as you can see, we get what we wanted. We get an array of cars exactly how we wanted them. So that's that. Let me remove this. Okay, so now with this out of the way, we're pretty much done with the users collection, and we can start working on the cars one. But before that, we need to do validation here. So right now we are simply trusting the client that the ID that it's going to provide is a valid one, is in the right format that MongoDB expects, etc. And we are like directly putting it inside of our function for querying the database. Now this is really bad because you can't really trust client that much, and basically we need to enforce some rules, and we need to basically use the user IDs all the time that we're using the request.body. We need to run them through some sort of verification and validation functions, so that when they arrive at our controller, we can be sure that they are what we expected them to be, and then we can safely inject them into these functions that deal with our database. So that's a topic for the next video, and after that we'll apply the similar things to the cars resource, and it will then come close to the end of this series. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this one. I also hope you learned a thing or two maybe, and I'll see you in the next one.